Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. We were dealing with some technical issues, but we are here and we are doing it. And I'm so excited to be here. Welcome to Looks and Queer Books with Alex Sanchez and Ash and Chess. I'm excited to be here with you all. I am Allison Carvalho, the events manager with Barbara's Bookstore. And I want to tell you a little bit about Barbara's. So we are a Chicago institution. We've been here since 1963, and we're so excited to bring you this virtual event. We're a family-owned and operated bookstore, and we pride ourselves on creating community spaces inside our stores as well as out of them, like here on this virtual panel. Before we begin the event, I want to give you all a quick tour of Crowdcast in case you've never been here before. First off, this is a virtual event, and it's something that we are still new to, as evidenced by us starting a little bit late. So please be patient with us if we're having any technical difficulties. If things end up going sideways, bear with us. We are going to get back up and running as fast as we can. Please feel free to chat on the event, the chat area that is next to you on the side of the screen. You can talk about your favorite books. You can talk to each other about where you're from. It's a great place in order to connect to other book lovers. Also, if you happen to notice that the event is freezing or you're experiencing any lag, look at the bottom of your screen and you'll see a little gear toggle. Go ahead and click on that and adjust the quality of your HD setting to 360. That will help to get rid of any excess lag. So the last 15 minutes is going to be open for questions. And if you look at the bottom, you will see a Ask a Question feature that is at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, you can type in any questions that you have for our panelists, and then people can look at those questions and they can upvote them if they're interested in hearing that question get answered. Also, if you happen to want to get on screen to ask your question directly, please put an O or on screen next to your question, and then that will let us know that you want to be pulled on screen, and that is something that we can do. And one of the most important things, if you look below us, you're going to see a button that says, click here to purchase You Brought Me the Ocean and the Gay Agenda. If you would like to purchase these books today, I highly recommend clicking on that link. It will take you directly to a website that gets you to our bookstore where you can purchase them online. But they are also available in store. They will be available at all our locations. Just make sure to call ahead and make sure it's in stock. And lastly, we want to make sure that this is a fun and amazing event, and in order to do that, we want to make sure that everyone is being as respectful and kind to their fellow book lovers as possible. So please make sure that you're coming at this with a kind heart, whether you're talking in the chat or asking questions. Alrighty, so what I'd like to do is we're going to start by bringing in our panelists kind of one at a time, and that way we can share a little bit of their artwork, and then we can go on with the panel. So firstly, I would like to introduce Ash and Chess, who is Ashley Molesso and Chessie Needham. They're the owners of the stationery company, Ash and Chess. Their fun, bright, and political art has made them huge in the stationery world. Their book, The Gay Agenda, A Modern Queer History and Handbook, carries the same aesthetic while sharing vital information about queer history and ways to understand and navigate the queer world. I would like to welcome to the screen Ash and Chess.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
We'll introduce ourselves so people know. I'm Ash, and my pronouns are she, her.
And I'm Chess, and my pronouns are he, him.
Yay!
Yay! Perfect. So let's kind of start at the beginning. I would love to talk about how you two began Ash and Chess, and kind of a little bit about how your art styles kind of complement, were they complementary to each other in the beginning?
Good question.
Yeah, very good question. So we actually met almost 5 years ago on a dating app, and we're a couple, we're together. But we started the company a few years into our relationship.
Yeah, 2017.
I had a design background, and Chess was a high school teacher. So I don't know, Chess didn't believe me that you could make money from selling stationery because it's just such a small thing. It's paper.
I still don't believe it. It's weird.
But yeah, we kind of were let's try this out. And so we kind of like debuted our company at a trade show, and it went really well. And I guess to answer the other part of the question, I kind of taught Chess everything he knows about illustration.
Yeah, no, not everything, but I did like, I don't have an art background, but I did have like a creative background. Like I went to school for photography for a bit, and like there's a lot of artistic people in my family, but Ashley did teach me specifically how to design like cards and use Illustrator and all that. So I think that that kind of definitely
your design style.
Yeah, that definitely like helped things kind of mesh together too, because we both designed the book, and I think it's pretty hard to tell, if not impossible to tell, who designed which parts of the book.
That's awesome. So tell us about the book. What was that process like? How did you kind of come to the decision of writing the book?
So we basically, I mean, who doesn't want to write a book? Probably everyone is like, I would love to write a book, but we never had like the specific intention that we said, oh, we're starting this stationery company because we want to eventually write a book. We were really, really lucky to find our agent, who messaged us, emailed us, and was like, hey, do you guys want to write a book? And we were like, about what? And she was like, oh, anything you want. And we were like, oh,
what do we, we were like, what do we want to do? Like,
yeah,
if we had like this chance to even make one, like what would it be?
Yeah, we like tossed around some really weird ideas. For some reason, we had been into drawing like dogs wearing clothing and stuff. I don't know why. We were like, maybe we should make that book. And then we're like, wait, this is so stupid. We should obviously make something a little more important than that. So we came up with the idea of The Gay Agenda, a modern queer history and handbook, because, you know, we just wanted to make something that was accessible for any type of reader. Hence like all the illustrations. And if you read the book, you'll see they're like kind of like short little passages. Like myself specifically, my background is in special education, and I know that I also like, I cannot digest history book information. Like when I'm reading a textbook and it's just so much info thrown at you. So we wanted to just make it so that it was like, not an easy reader, but something that anyone could get into. And obviously, we're both part of the queer community, so we wanted it to be something that hopefully reflected thoughts and feelings of a lot of people in our community, and also just showed that we've always been around, and you know, we're always here, and we contributed to history, even if people don't talk about it in the mainstream.
For sure. So I want to talk a little bit. I'm going to share some images. I'm going to toggle myself off screen so that I can share some images. And I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about kind of your artistic style and kind of what your inspirations are and where your inspiration comes from.
Cool.
I know. This was one of my favorite ones from the book. I loved it so much.
Yeah, it's like they were so fun to draw. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I feel like we were just looking at this like stock picture and laughing at the people in the hair. We were like, this is so fun.
Well, her hair is so big. We actually saw Lady Bunny in person at Pride last year.
And her hair was really that big.
And her hair was so big, and it was just it was perfect. And I feel like
I think you drew this really before that too, and I was like, this is too big. This is crazy. And it really looks like that when we saw her in person.
It's really cool.
Or it's not big enough.
It could be bigger. Could have gone across 2 pages.
Yeah, but I love so much that like you're able to incorporate like different forms of different kind of forms of color and history, and kind of be able to share it all together. Sorry, trying to toggle pictures and talk at the same time is a challenge. There we go. But I just love how you were able to incorporate the art and the history together. And I'm wondering about how how difficult was your research? What was that process like to do the research? And also, like, what was kind of one of the more surprising things you found in your research?
I think the research was...
I'm not sure I understand. Sorry.
I was like, that's not my Siri, right?
Technical difficulties with my watch. So sorry. Please continue.
It's okay. My AirPods kept talking to me the other day when I was walking the dog because I call her silly girl, and Siri kept being like, I'm not a silly girl. It's like, what? Really weird. But the research was really hard. I mean, I think that a lot of people that write history books probably typically have like way more of a background in history in general and like just in writing and in researching. And I think part of like the hardest part of the research was that when you're trying to find like something to write about, events to write about, or important figures to write about, and you're trying to search them and like see, you know, like who should be in this book and who shouldn't be in this book. First off, like making that decision is really difficult because you don't want to leave people out. And then you're like, well, I don't know if this person was like important enough. And then it kind of turns into this like, oh, I feel bad for not including that person and including this person in their place. But also like when you're actually researching something, obviously you can find tons of information on things that have already been written about. So if you're trying to find something that's a little bit more off the beaten path, I guess, it also turns into kind of this complex problem of like, if you're actually researching something well, or if you're actually finding facts. And when you're writing about history, you want to be writing down the facts. And it's difficult because history has already been like really whitewashed and really cisgender and really heterosexual washed as well. And so like, that's what's easy to find. And so in this case, like queer history also is really like, not overrun, but it's easiest to find information about like cisgender gay men being like the ones that made history. And so like then we kind of always fall into that trap too, where it's like, well, that's what we can find information about. So that's what we're kind of like forced to write about. So I think that was the hardest part about researching, in my opinion, was just like trying to make the right choices and trying to like only write about what we could really find as like fact, because that kind of leaves out like a lot of nuance, but it also leaves the door open to volume 2. So
yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Well, and I also really loved that, like, as much as the book had so much history, it also had that really lovely, the handbook in the back that kind of gives people an opportunity, whether they're queer and they're kind of exploring themselves, or someone that's outside of the queer world and trying to just get a better understanding. Like, everything was explained in a really lovely, simple way. What kind of made you think to not just make it a history book, but to also make it a handbook?
So we actually had different plans from the beginning, and we wanted it to be half history and half handbook. But I mean, for those of you who have actually seen the book, it's more like this much is history and then this much is handbook. So yeah, I mean, as Chess was saying, like, it was kind of like, well, I mean, I guess maybe you didn't touch up on this, but like it was like figuring out what to put in the history part like was a little overwhelming, because like we had an idea of what we wanted to put. And then as we were doing this research, we kept finding new topics and like new things that we hadn't really heard about that we made room for. And then I feel like the handbook kind of got pushed way to the back.
It got really small.
Yeah. But like, it was something that we really, really wanted to include. So like, luckily we were able to include some things about it, but
Yeah.
I definitely wish that it would have been bigger, because like the whole point of this book was like to, you know, like give like factual information about like queer people in the past and the present, and like also give like informational information. Like,
Practical information.
General things like
For sure.
what we can hear about.
I think though that even though like that ratio kind of is sitting at that level of history versus handbook, I do think that there's plenty of like practical knowledge within the fight and within the struggles that for people have experienced within that history, where you end up learning kind of context for like what the handbook is saying. So it almost kind of provides like a lovely set of context for what the handbook ends up being. So like, I think, though I understand what you're saying, I loved how much history was in the book. I thought that just was so fascinating. I felt like I learned so many things where I was like, ooh, keywords, like these are things I know I can research that I want to know more about. Like it gives a really great opportunity to delve a little deeper.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. We're going to go ahead and we're going to toggle over to Alex for a little bit. Thank you guys so much. We will bring you back up to screen in a bit.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you. All righty. So next up, I would like to bring up our next panelist. Alex Sanchez is an award-winning author of the Rainbow Boys series, So Hard to Say, and The God Box. It's no wonder that he was invited to tell this wonderful story of this iteration of Aqualad in his new book, You Brought Me the Ocean. Next, coming to the screen, is Alex Sanchez.
Hey, it's great to be with you.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. So I want to hear a little bit about your writing origin story. Tell us a little bit about how you got to writing.
Well, I didn't write when I was a child, but I had a very creative mom. She was a watercolor artist, and she always encouraged my creativity. And so after college, I started writing a lot. And we hear about writer's block, and usually we see, someone sitting in front of blank screen or blank sheet of paper. And for me, my block was not being able to finish things. So it was finally, I reached out to a couple of friends. I realized I couldn't do it alone. And it was thanks to them that with their encouragement and support that I started my first novel, and that was Rainbow Boys.
That's amazing. So this book is a departure for you. It's your first graphic novel with DC Comics, and you got to work with this amazing artist, Julie Moreau, who did Blue is the Warmest Color. What was the process of writing this book like, and kind of working with her on it? By the way, I'm going to share some images while you're talking.
Okay, great. So DC, they're rolling out a new line of graphic novels, reaching out for audiences that don't traditionally read comic books. And so what they want to do is focus on real life teen issues. And so since I'd written a lot about LGBTQ teens, they reached out to me. And I said, I'd love to do it, but I've never written a graphic novel. And they're like, that's okay. You know how to tell a story, and we'll guide you through the process. And so the big difference was that usually when I write a manuscript is I write the whole thing, turn it into the editor, and then, work with them after that. And for this, we worked off of a synopsis and started writing a script. Comic book or graphic novel script is very similar to a movie script. And I worked with a wonderful editor, Sarah Miller, and we started writing it in chunks. So the first 25%, the second 25%, on and on. So after that first 25%, they paired me up with Julie Moreau, just an amazing artist. And then they're the ones who really started bringing life to the characters. And that was just a magical experience. Usually when I write a story, I had a vague idea of what a character looks like. But to actually see someone come up with a full-fledged drawing of a character, that was just amazing. And Jules' artwork, as you can see, is just spectacular, very different from traditional sort of comic books style, different from superhero style. So I was just very excited with it. She just put so much expression into the faces and so much action. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, I was really touched by so much of the artwork. I just felt like it it felt really personal. And I was kind of wondering about that because I know that you definitely related to the character of Jake in a few ways. You've always loved water, and like you've had your own experiences kind of struggling with LGBTQ issues. And so I'm curious about kind of the process of relating to the characters you write about, especially because this particular story, it's not really a superhero story in like the general sense. It's a very personal, very intimate story. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your relation to it and kind of telling a superhero story that doesn't have a ton of fighting and superhero elements.
Yeah, so DC, that was their objective. They really wanted me to focus on the emotional core of the story. And so, yeah, it's a superhero origin story unlike any that you've ever read before. It's also a romance, a boy-boy romance, and it's a love triangle, and it's a coming out story. So putting all that together makes it really unique. What was very exciting for me was, working with the metaphor that for lots of times for queer people, we identify with superheroes because so oftentimes it's like, because we're not able to be out, especially when we're growing up lots of times. For many people, we can't be out. So it's like we have this secret identity and we're living this double life. And so part of the fun with this story is to really play with that metaphor of Jake Hyde, the protagonist, that he's coming to terms, coming to terms with his sexuality. At the same time, he's discovering his superpowers.
For sure. And I really enjoyed how I felt like the conversations that they were having, there were a lot of really lovely family dynamics and kind of families that kind of speaking to chosen family versus the family you have. And like that to me is such a large part of the queer community, is that idea of chosen family and these characters that have been able to find their family throughout the story. I just thought was so lovely.
Yeah, part of the fun of writing about teen characters and writing for young people is to show characters how they're resolving issues in their lives. So whether it's family issues or sexuality issues or bullying, it's like, how do they deal with those issues?
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for this little bit of one-on-one. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring Ash and Chess back onto the screen so that we can have a whole conversation together. Hello, everybody.
Hello. Sorry, our dog decided to join too.
No worries. Great. So part of what I wanted to discuss initially was kind of talking about the reasons why people choose to put visual elements within their books. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what you think a visual component adds to a book, or what you think it changes about a reading experience.
Okay.
Sure, I'll start. So as a traditionally, prose author, the big difference for me with this was being able to see how you can tell a story on two levels, on the text level and then also the visual level, and how those two can complement each other. And I'd love to hear from Ash and Chess how you found that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like in a graphic novel, obviously it makes sense. That's what a graphic novel is. And it is like really interesting to see like a story play out in like with a visual element to it. I know that graphic novels always, and like cartoons and comics always kind of like got my attention because of that, because I would just kind of lose it on just text. But I think in ours, it's like a little bit different. I think I mean, obviously for us illustrating it, since we're illustrators, stop it, was kind of like what we had to do. But I also think that there's just like this kind of power in like drawing people and like seeing yourself drawn, especially because a lot of the people that we drew in the book are still obviously like alive today. And we tried to make sure that they got copies of the book, and they were like, wow, this is like so cool to see. Like, I don't know, it just seems like drawing somebody is like such an intimate act, and then you're kind of like giving them so much power by spending time drawing them, and like, of course, writing about their story, but then also just giving them like something to look at as well about themselves. I don't know.
For sure. And I think too, it helps that there's, I mean, both of your books are incredibly different, but they have this way of, I think they both speak to kind of what's going on today in a really lovely way, both in aesthetic as well as in content and in conversation form. And I realized I might have cut Ashley off before she had a chance to say something. Did you want to say something? I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was just gonna say that me personally, I'm a really visual person, and I felt like being able to make this book so colorful is like a way to like get people to stay engaged.
Yeah.
Like the way we designed it is like we tried to make every single page like a different layout and like different colors. So like we didn't really stick to any specific layout. So like you could literally just open the book to any page and then like it would just be its own piece of work. But I don't know. I kind of like when we were designing it, we were like, let's like use the design as an advantage to like try to like catch people to like, you know, I don't know.
Make them read it.
No. Well, like, you know, I don't know. Yeah.
For sure. And actually, I kind of see a little bit of that similarly with You Brought Me the Ocean, because there are definitely pages that have kind of your more standard panels, but then there would be a page that would have something really unique about it. I'm going to see if I can find one very quickly. So
well, that was part of the fun of the book is you know, both in my writing and then to give Jewel, the artist, you know, the script to work with, is try to find different ways to tell a story visually, you know, because I'd never written I mean, what they did there was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And, you know, since I hadn't written a comic book before, it's like I, you know, started reading all these graphic novels, and what I realized was the ones that were most visually stimulating for me were the ones that had action between the characters, where they're doing something, even if it's just, you know, pouring a glass of orange juice. You know, in every panel, what can the characters be doing? And then giving the artist different nuances of, okay, in this panel, they're irritated, and now they're getting annoyed, and now they're getting angrier. And so rather than just saying, you know, they're angry, next panel angry, next panel angry, you know, giving the artist stuff to work with as well.
It's so cool.
Definitely. There were some really delightful times when you could tell that they were really, like, a couple of characters would get really frustrated with their parents, and you'd see like a little smoke plume come up off the top of their head. And I was like, oh, I know those feels, kid.
Yeah,
like,
relatable.
I remember. I was just, like, hearing your parents like yap, and you're just like, oh, you don't get it, Mom. Like, come on. So both of your books have a lot of representation of people of color, additionally to a wide expression of queerness. And a lot of times comic books can be on the front lines of issues of marginalization. So I want to talk a little bit about, I know you guys have kind of touched on representation, but a little bit more about what that representation means to you and what you might be hoping that other artists and writers might be doing in the future in order to push that representation forward.
I mean, I think we can go first, I guess.
Maybe I should start pointing, but I don't know what screen you guys are at. So, Justin Ash first.
Like, to write a queer book without representation is kind of I mean, obviously that would be doing a disservice to our community, but it also would probably feel like a huge slap in the face to anyone that is not a white cisgender person reading it. Because if, you know, like if we have a queer community and we're saying that we are one community because we all have something connecting us, and it's, if we're LGBTQIA, whatever, like anything, it would be like to not talk about like racial issues, or to not make sure that there are different sexualities, gender identities, and races and all of that included in the book, I think would just be like, it just seems a little bit crazy. And I know it happens in the queer community, definitely, but I think that to me, it was really important to make sure that we tried our best to not fall into like that same trope, I guess, because if we're all saying that we're kind of like outsiders in some way, then to continue to then other people is like, it just seems like a big middle finger to the rest of the community. So we wanted to make sure that we tried our best to be representational.
And we hope that other people do it in the future too.
And do it better.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, in young adult writing, we talk a lot about mirrors and windows and how important it can be, you know, for a young person to see a representation of themselves in a book. And I experienced that, you know, I'm an immigrant from Mexico, and when, you know, I was 5 years old when we moved to Texas, and back then we had the Dick and Jane readers in which everyone was white, and not just white, I mean really pasty white. And you know, it's like there weren't those representations of you know, black or brown or Asian people. And so you know, I looked for that growing up, and then when I started, you know, writing, and I would put in a Latino writer character, then I would hear from young people about how much that meant to them to see someone like themselves in print. And then, you know, for you know, non-queer or different ethnicities, then allows, you know, it acts as a window to be able to see in the lives of those people. And one of the exciting things about a graphic novel is that you don't have to say, you know, this person was African American. You just see them. You know, they're either African American or Asian American or white or whatever. And that to be able to show that diversity in the images of the characters, I just think is so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about kind of the landscape of how YA has changed even within the past 10 years. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you have seen in, like, have you seen a shift, and what has that experience been like for you, kind of, because you've been writing YA books for quite a while. So how has that shift been for you?
Oh, it's been tremendously exciting to be, you know, a part of that. When Rainbow Boys came out was 2001. And at the time, people thought it was groundbreaking because, you know, before there had been sort of isolated teen characters, but they usually had to, you know, commit suicide or die tragically. And what the publisher was so excited about was that in my book, no one died. You know, they were connecting, you know, either romantically or through friendships. The parents were involved. And you know, part of what I'm grateful for is not only my own career, but that then, you know, it was able to open the doors for other books. And so we're still not at the level of representation that it accurately reflects, you know, our culture and society. But every year there are more and more books with LGBTQ characters and themes and more diversity. And just like, you know, everything else in our culture about these issues, it's sad that it's taken this long and that it's still not happening enough and fast enough, but at least there's movement.
Definitely. For sure. So both of your books handle some pretty intense subjects, whether it's anti-LGBTQ plus bullying, the challenges of coming out to your family, protests, police raids. In the gay agenda, you talk about the AIDS epidemic. And there is a lot of, obviously, both of your books are very heavy on the imagery. And so I'm wondering about like the challenges of trying to navigate dealing with those kind of subjects and kind of the process of deciding how to represent those subjects within your books. Heavy question, I know. Ash and Chess, would you like to go first, or do you want a minute?
Well, I will say that for the AIDS section, it's a pretty big section. Like, we were lucky enough to go to California, and we went to the archives in San Francisco and LA, and they had a ton of stuff on. They just had like a bunch of AIDS ephemera and like just everything. They had signs from protests, and I feel like seeing like the actual like things in person and like being able to like access these archives. Also, let me just note, I think that a lot of it is like online, so you can just easily access like a lot of the like artifacts and stuff and like documents that a bunch of these archives have. But anyway, just like I feel like seeing these things like kind of just, that's like what we wanted to draw, like actual, I mean, I guess a lot of the stuff in here is like representations, or I mean just like illustrations of already existing things. But when it came to like that stuff, like we used like actual real things to trace that we had found. And that really shaped it. I don't know. I'm nervous.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, it brings a reality to it, definitely.
Yeah, it was like really like wild. So like see like the actual physical like things. Just like, you know, especially the AIDS stuff, because there was just so much of it. It was like insane how much there was. We didn't even include all of it.
Yeah, and it was like interesting how just like drawing so many, like we had, I mean, obviously we covered numerous protests and riots and things like that and police raids. Obviously right now that's like extremely relevant, but it's just so, I don't even know if weird is the right word to see, maybe just like sad, I guess, to see that people are still protesting the same things just for in a different context right now too. So that was just really interesting to see. We're not out of the dark times yet, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Alex, do you have any thoughts?
Sure, yeah. For me, I think, you know, in You Brought Me the Ocean, probably the heaviest is the bullying and the homophobia. And again, I thought it was, you know, this wonderful metaphor that, you know, as queer people, we face this super villain, which is, you know, homophobia and transphobia and you know, prejudice. And so to stand up to that. So what we tried to do in You Brought Me the Ocean was, you know, to address that, not pretend that that doesn't exist, and at the same time to show this tremendous cultural shift that's gone on, where you know, there is much more queer visibility and much more acceptance than in the past. And so how these characters are able to you know, fight homophobia and fight bullying, you know, by joining together, by joining forces, by helping each other, you know, by building community. So that sense of power that you know, when we can join together, how much more power that we have.
Yeah. Oh, y'all are gonna make me tear up. So many feelings.
Well, that's another part of, you know, that was so excited about this story, was that here's a superhero that, you know, he's not alone. You know, he's got his friends that help to empower him.
Yeah. Oh, chosen family. Oh, it's so nice.
I can't wait to read this book.
Yeah, I know.
Oh God, it's so lovely. You're gonna love it. So Speaking of books, my last question before we open up to the audience, which a friendly reminder, please feel free to ask any questions that you'd like within the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of your screen. What are some books that are queer books or queer authors that you might be excited about that you might want to recommend to our readers?
Well, we can go first. Wait, I don't know how to do this. We did make a little graphic.
You made a list.
Okay, so
you go to the little camera.
Okay.
You should have a little thing that says that you can, like, with a computer on it, that you can click to share your screen.
Yeah.
I'll toggle out so that there's more space.
Okay, it's gonna.
So it actually is both.
Wait, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's artists and books, and the artists, not all of them are queer, but I wanted to include people that inspired us while we were making the book. So we still very much appreciate them. And yes, the books that we made a list of are some like queer authors we really enjoy and queer authors that we are excited to read.
Yes. We can also like maybe.
I was about to say, could you maybe send this to me?
Yeah,
On our social media? Yeah, send it to me and then we can share it on our social media for sure.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, we wanted to, I mean, it's like kind of our reading list too, and then we got a little off track with how we were like, making a whole long list. So.
Understandably so. What about you, Alex? Any good recommendations?
One that I read this past year, it came out. It's by Mariko Tamaki. Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me. And it's this wonderful, I'm not sure I could call it a love story, but a relationship story that is it just rings so true. I just loved it. So Mariko Tamaki's Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me.
Oh, that sounds lovely. I love it. I love a good title too.
Yeah.
That says everything you need to know right there. It's like, oh, I'm in. All right, everyone, we're going to open it up to questions. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the Ask a Question dealing. Perfect. All righty. So this is a question for Ash and Chess. I would love it if you could talk more about the joys and challenges about writing about living figures. This is from Natanya.
Oh man, it was scary writing about some of the people that we wrote about are like huge celebrities in my brain, but probably not huge celebrities to everybody. But I was like really, really nervous writing about some people that I was like, what if they read it and they don't like what we said about them? And they disagree with how we represented them, or like they don't like the drawing we did of them or something like that. So that was my challenge, because I specifically wanted to send it to some people and then was like, what if they don't like it? I don't know what you think of other challenges.
I don't know. I mean, kind of what Jess said.
Copycat.
Yeah, I'm a copycat. I mean, one thing that like I was really curious about with writing about people that are like alive today still and like are like maybe not as well known, I was like, is this weird? Because it was like these people, I mean, a lot of people we included were like activists or like even just like people that are like part of, I don't know, like in like the government, not like you know, local government. I'm getting nervous answering this question. I guess I have the same fears too. I was like, you know, like whenever you write about like super celebrities or something, it's like they're probably never gonna see it. Yeah. Like, I mean, if David Bowie was alive, like he would never pick up the gay agenda. I just assume maybe, but
I think he would appreciate the aesthetic of your book at the barest of minimums.
but like people that like aren't like really like super famous, like it just it's like a little nerve-wracking because they're like, I feel like it's just like they feel more closer to us normal people, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was cool. It is a weird thing.
Yeah.
But we still admire them.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
Natanya says thanks. This was a question that I'm very curious about. And I think it's one that everyone could answer, but might be slightly leaning towards Alex, is there a comic book character or some other property that inspired you as a kid? And I would kind of look at that as like inspiring your art and like the kind of work you've created.
Well, in terms of comic books, when I was I read the superheroes, but the ones that I remember most there was these characters like Casper the Friendly Ghost and Wendy the Good Little Witch, and I just love those monster comics. And looking back on it, I think what it was that they were good people, but everyone thought they were monsters, and they'd run away screaming, and I guess I sort of identified with that I knew I was a good kid, but afraid if I revealed myself that people would think I was a monster. So that's for me.
Wow.
That's so interesting.
I think I do have one. Well, this is like embarrassing now because of how he's been co-opted, but my brother really liked Calvin and Hobbes, and so I got all his Calvin and Hobbes books, and I like really, really related to Calvin because he was just like such an independent thinker, and he was kind of a loner too. And I was like, this guy is just awesome, and it sucks that now he's like on every person's like truck bumper pissing on something because he would never do that. His character, so that part really bothers me. But I thought he was really
It's sad how our childhood things can sometimes end up getting co-opted by like the most like unseemly.
Yeah, I'm like, Calvin does not represent you.
Exactly. What about you, Ashley?
I don't know if I have an answer.
That's okay. That is entirely okay. That is just fine. I can understand that. So here is a question that I have. Hang on one second. So I know that for both of you, obviously, there were a lot of firsts here. First graphic novel, first book. Was there like a particular first moment or like a first thing that was very exciting for you with this project?
All of it for
All of
us.
it.
We were like shocked when our agent contacted us. We were shocked when we turned in the proposal and people wanted to look at it. We were shocked when we started writing it. We were shocked when we turned it in.
Yeah, we were okay. I think my favorite part was getting the
Oh my gosh, the fake one.
the I guess it's not, maybe it's a
It's
dummy.
our prank one.
It's our prank book because so like it's actually like blank inside, but it has pages. And I think that they're the sales copy, but whenever we saw
That's
this
true.
for the first time, I freaked out because it's like a real thing, and like it takes so long to make a book, and like I don't know, I think we got this like halfway through maybe the process, and just like this was my favorite part, like receiving
and like
sweet little baby.
Sorry to take it from you. And like it had like the barcode and everything on the back, so we were like, oh man,
Yeah, we're like, it's
they put it in
real.
the system.
Favorite first part
Yeah.
of like seeing our work actually, like, because it's like
It's real.
we were really excited to even do this project and like to see that it's actually becoming something that people will like have and keep and maybe hopefully love. It's just really cool.
What about for you, Alex?
Well, for me, it was the first time, I've collaborated with someone on a book. So, I'm envious of, Chess and Ash that, you all have each other to collaborate with each other, because I just loved it. That feeding off of each other's ideas and sparking each other's creativity. It's that was the first time I'd worked that collaboratively with someone on a book project. So I hope to do it again. I loved it, Because usually writing a manuscript, it's so lonely.
Yeah,
Just me and hours just writing by myself. So to be able to, be getting that constant feedback from someone else was wonderful.
yeah.
That was actually the next question that I was going to ask you, Alex, was whether or not you were planning on doing more graphic novels, if you wanted to try to do this again.
I would love to. Let's see what DC says. But so far, people who read the book are like, wait a minute, you can't just leave me there. I want to read more. So hopefully there'll be more.
I'm not going to lie. I definitely felt those feels. I was like, wait, what? It's over? What? I thought, but no, but I want no more.
Well,
So
someone pointed out to me, it's kind of deceiving because, the story ends about 20 pages before the end of the book. And so in the back of it are Jules' sketchbook of when they were doing their first sketches for the characters.
Cool.
So I think people get deceived that they think there's more to come, and it's like, wait a minute, the story ended. What are these other things?
I will say, though, the sketchbook is definitely a worthy addition to the back of the book, because I think it really kind of gives you a little more insight into like the process that goes into all of this and all of the thought that goes into the ways you want to represent those characters, which I thought was really, really cool. Kind of get like almost a little bit extra behind the scenes into the process of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so
Yeah. So I was curious about if you can talk about them, if anyone wanted to talk about whatever their like, what your process during this quarantine has been like. Like, have you been working on anything right now? And like, how has it been kind of trying to produce art during the quarantine?
Ugh.
Is right.
I feel like this is the most creative time I've ever had in my life. But I know that's not so we just moved recently. We moved in November, and we used to live in Brooklyn, and while we were living there, I was working freelance, like part-time, and I was like designing sheets and stuff. And then the other half of my time, I was like running the business with Chess and like designing stuff and like fulfilling wholesale orders and everything. And then when we moved here, quarantine kind of started happening like a few months after we moved. And then I stopped freelancing because a lot of places closed, including my freelance job. Like they didn't close, they just like, they couldn't, not, but it just gave me like all this free time all of a sudden, because like we weren't getting orders either because shops have been closed. So there was just like this stretch of like 3 months. Has it been 3 months?
Yeah, longer maybe.
3 months of like me having total freedom. And, like, I haven't had like I've had like part freedom, which is like more than a lot of people have. But like having so much freedom, like I've done so many projects and it's been so cool, and like I'm obsessed. And I feel like I've just gotten so much. It's just really, I like embroidered stuff. That's and like cool. I painted a portrait for the first time. And I like designed a new card line. I like designed a proposal for a tarot deck. I've just been doing a bunch of stuff.
Oh, get that hustle on.
I mean, I'm gonna burn out eventually, but like right now I'm like riding the wave.
The juices are flowing. You got to roll with it if the juices are flowing.
Yeah, I don't do well with no structure, so I'm not having the same experience. But it is more like it's like a free artist retreat, I guess.
Yeah, Also because we just moved and we're in a different place, I do feel like I'm at a cabin, just like with free reign.
Yeah.
Awesome. What about for you, Alex?
Well, I haven't gotten a lot of work done, but it's just so lonesome. Even though I have my husband, usually it's like after working all day, it's like, I need to be around people, after being by myself all day long, I need to be around people. And as much as I love my husband, it's like I also like to be around other people. And so The virtual stuff, we're fortunate that we can do this, and at the same time, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Fair. That's super true. I think that's what a lot of people are experiencing, is like kind of this like, oh great, we have a lot of time together, but at the same time I could really use some alone time. Is that a thing? Can I have that, please? Totally understandable. All right, everyone. Well, I think that's it for our questions. I want to thank all of you for being here and being part of this panel. It was so wonderful to get to bring you all together and get to talk about your wonderful books. If we could, I would love to have Ash and Chess tell their socials and where they can follow them, and then we'll have Alex tell his socials where people can follow him, and then I'll have a couple closing remarks. So Ash and Chess, where can people find you?
So we are on Instagram, and that's where we do most of our stuff. We update it like all the time. It's a good place to keep up with like what's going on with our lives and like what we're doing. And here, I'll actually type these in the chat.
Oh,
so
so
people.
smart.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's super smart.
Let's see.
We're on Instagram as Ash and Chess. Very creative. And our website is also Ash and Chess.
It's branding. It is very creative because it's branding. Very important.
So that's where you can find us.
Yep.
And yeah.
Awesome. And Alex?
So for me, either on my website, alexsanchez.com, you can find out more about all my books and stuff. Otherwise, on Facebook, Alex Sanchez, author.
Cool.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, I just want to say a heartfelt thank you so much.
Uh-oh.
A connection error.
Well, it was great hearing about you all's books. I want to go get that. The Gay Agenda was just awesome what you all have done.
Yeah, your book looks amazing. We have it pulled up in another window to buy it now.
Cool.
It's so good. I love those novels.
Yeah.
I wasn't kidding about those technical difficulties. I ran away, but I'm back. All righty. I just want to thank so much Ashley, Chessie, and Alex. The Gay Agenda, A Modern Queer History and Handbook, and You Brought Me the Ocean are both available online and at all of our locations. Please make sure to check out the green button below in order to purchase these incredible, amazing books. We also hope to see you here for our Sci-Fi Summer Series, which will be happening in July. We're currently confirming a slew of sci-fi authors that I am so incredibly excited to bring to you all. So make sure to follow us on Instagram and follow all our social medias. Keep an eye on our website and all that stuff. That's where all that information will be. And I can tell you that we officially have our first one announced, and it is with Cadwell Turnbull, who is the author of The Lesson. That book is coming out, just came out on paperback. And we will be discussing telling stories about divisive family dynamics within sci-fi. So I think it's going to be a really fun, interesting conversation. I can't wait to share with you. Also, do not forget to also keep an eye out for some of our other things going on, such as we are doing our first trivia night this upcoming Wednesday, and it's going to be really fun. We're actually going to have a pride round, which I am writing using history from the Gay Agenda.
Well, we're gonna
go there.
I was going to say, y'all definitely have to hop in on that one because it's going to be dope. I'm so excited. So yeah, and that'll be upcoming this Wednesday. You can email events@barbarasbookstore.com to get more info on how the trivia works and how to sign up. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, audience members, for checking us out, and I hope to see you soon. Happy reading.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
This was fun.
Bye.
Thanks.